And today, Ukraine will pitch its own peace plan to the Trump administration as peace talks stall between Moscow and Kyiv. Ukrainian President Zelensky meeting with European leaders in London yesterday. France, Germany, and the UK vowing more security guarantees, adding that European contributions to President Trump's peace plan. Zelensky refusing to cede any land to Russia as outlined in that plan, a proposal which President Trump said Zelensky did not even read in time. Here's the president yesterday.
I just want to see people stop from being killed. 27,000 soldiers died last month. That's what I want to see stopped. We, as you know, we now sell equipment to NATO at full price, and NATO takes that equipment and probably gives it to Ukraine. I guess they could give it to others too, but for the most part, give it to Ukraine. And they're working with Ukraine in terms of distribution of equipment, missiles, etc. But we aren't spending money. What we are doing is spending time on a humane basis. We want to see if we can stop the killing of 27. It would have never happened. If I were president, this war would have never happened.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also meeting with Zelensky to coordinate the purchase of U.S. arms by NATO allies under the prioritized Ukraine requirements list. Reuters is reporting the U.S. is pushing Europe to take over the majority of NATO's defense capabilities by 2027. Joining me now live from Brussels this morning is U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. Ambassador, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. I was struck by the title in the Journal this morning on the story, Europe is scrambling for influence in the U.S.-led peace talks on the war in Ukraine. What can you tell us about the latest here?
Well, good morning, Maria. It's always good to join you. What I can tell you is it's a process, and this war has been going on for 4 years almost. It's not going to stop overnight. What has to happen though is that President Trump needs to be the one that is mediating this dispute, we just I think have to know that President Trump is the only one that can bring this war to an end by bringing both sides to the table, hammering out a deal. He is the peacemaker in chief, and ultimately it's going to take that involvement by the United States, especially President Trump, to do it. And the shuttle diplomacy that's going on, I think, is productive. There are discussions happening, but we need to get not a Venn diagram that overlaps a little bit. We need to get a complete agreement on every point to end this war, and that's taking time. And I'm, proud that my friends Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are involved, that they're going back and forth between the Ukrainians and the Russians to see if there is a deal to be had here. The killing does need to end. President Trump is absolutely right.
Yeah, but Ambassador, I mean, look, what about the fact that Ukraine doesn't want to give up any land, and that, of course, was part of the stipulation in the president's peace plan? How is this going to end if Zelensky keeps saying we're not going to cede any land and Putin keeps saying we're not going to do a deal and we're going to keep this going until I get more land?
Yeah, I think you need to look at this through the lens of engagement. Zelensky continues to be engaged in discussing what the options are, including the security guarantees by the United States and our NATO allies. But also, he's got a domestic audience that he has to message to, as well as his European folks that are currently paying for a lot of his defense. And so you add all that together, and I think right now the discussions continue. And until we're all told that the discussions have ended and they were either productive or not productive, I think that's the moment. But what one leader says, whether it's President Zelensky or Vladimir Putin, oftentimes isn't it exactly what's going on inside the room. And I have a lot of confidence, again, in President Trump as the peacemaker in chief to getting this done, to keeping both sides engaged and hammering out a deal that finally ends the killing. Because losing 25 to 30,000 people, both on the battlefield and in Ukraine, I think it's just we need this war to end.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Look, the New York Post is out with an op-ed this morning, and it's titled this, Impotent Europeans Can Only Fume as Trump Rightly Sidelines Them from the Ukraine Deal. They call President Trump's peace plan, quote, a triple win for the Europeans, but they're acting like bad losers. The Europeans would rather risk war on Putin's terms than peace on Trump's. Your reaction to this op-ed, impotent Europeans, is what they're calling them. And by the way, we know that Europe is holding really the dominance and the influence over the $244 billion in frozen Russian assets they're divided on whether or not to release that money to fund Ukraine. I know you've talked a lot about using the dividends on that money to rebuild Ukraine, but what about the $244 billion? I mean, why is that still in question?
Yeah, well, I think that my sense of talking to our allies that are going to make that decision in the coming weeks, I think they feel that they have a pretty good path forward to get that done. But again, the United States has not expressed a position, and I think President Trump is just watching it. He knows that this war needs to end. What we don't need is to fund more war. What we need is to have both sides come to the table and resolve this. I was at the Doha Forum over the weekend in Qatar, and one of the things I said was that you don't go into a butcher shop halfway through the sausage being made and criticize how he's making the sausage, especially if you plan on enjoying it later. You just let the process work, and I think that's what's happening here. We have a lot of people that are standing on the sidelines, on the outside, criticizing either the process or the participants, and this is where the United States again is the only country, and President Trump is the president that can get this done, and he's the only person that can get this done. And so I think right now we just need to sort of ignore the noise and focus on productive talks between the participants in this war to get it resolved. It's hard, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do the hard things that can bring peace.
All right, we will be watching all of that. Matt Whitaker, great to talk with you as always. Thank you, sir.
All right, Maria. Good morning. Thank you.
Ambassador to NATO. Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.